Imagine declaring your fragile existence to a hostile watching world. Total annihilation loomed merely hours after this defiant political act. 5 armed invading armies immediately crossed the chaotic national borders. They wanted to erase this fledgling nation from existence forever. This terrifying nightmare actually birthed the modern state of Israel. The bloody genesis of this country shocked the 20th century. Global superpowers played a lethal geopolitical game with millions involved. We must rewind to the ancient spiritual origins of this territory. Ancient biblical texts promised this specific sacred land to Jews. Judea and Israel stood incredibly proud during the second millennium. These powerful ancient realms existed long before our modern era. Ruthless invading empires repeatedly crushed these prosperous kingdoms into dust. Rome eventually annexed the weakened territory through supreme military force. This catastrophic geopolitical shift occurred during the year 63. Oppressive Roman rulers transformed independent Judea into a brutal protectorate. Desperate Jewish citizens launched 2 massive violent revolts against legions. Elite Roman soldiers utterly destroyed the sacred ancient Holy Temple. This cultural devastation happened during the fierce initial armed uprising. Emperor Hadrian mercilessly crushed the subsequent Bar Kokhba military rebellion. This tragic historic slaughter happened in the year 135. Vengeful imperial commanders exiled countless Jewish families from ancestral homes. Rome maliciously renamed the conquered rebellious province to Syria Palestina. Scholars view this as calculated psychological warfare against collective memory. Small nomadic Jewish communities quietly returned throughout the dark centuries. Mass survival migration finally ignited during the late 19th century. The vast, rotting Ottoman Empire controlled the barren Palestinian territories. Terrifying Russian pogroms forced desperate families to flee eastern villages. The crucial year, 1882, marked the first major wave. 35,000 exhausted refugees reached the distant Middle Eastern shores. 20,000 local Jews already inhabited the dusty Ottoman province. Edmond de Rothschild deployed massive hidden wealth to finance settlements. Historians officially call this initial survival migration the first Aliyah. European pioneer communities purchased neglected plots of hostile desert lands. These rocky, malarial swamps seemed absolutely useless for traditional farming. Cunning Arab landowners drastically inflated land prices for desperate buyers. Ottoman officials officially banned territorial sales to incoming Jewish immigrants. Corrupt imperial administrators conveniently ignored these strict edicts for bribes. Pioneer farmers deployed revolutionary agricultural techniques across the dead swamps. Lush green fields miraculously replaced deadly malaria under the sun. Observant Arab neighbors rapidly adopted these highly profitable farming methods. The Swiss city Basel hosted the first World Zionist Congress. This monumental historical gathering occurred in the year 1897. Theodor Herzl engineered this incredible political movement from absolute obscurity. This brilliant Austro-Hungarian journalist envisioned a sovereign Jewish national sanctuary. Herzl tirelessly lobbied powerful monarchs to support his daring dream. He personally negotiated with Turkish Sultan Abdul Hamid II. The ambitious intellectual activist also met German Kaiser Wilhelm later. Russian Emperor Nicholas II completely ignored the Zionist project. Herzl tragically died during the year 1904. He never witnessed the glorious, violent realization of his vision. The massive Second Aliyah exploded immediately after his sudden death. 40,000 Russian Jews escaped terrifying systemic violence over 10 years. These resilient pioneers established heavily fortified communal socialist agricultural settlements. We recognize these radical collective farming compounds as modern kibbutzim. Settlers forged a secretive paramilitary organization called Hashomer for protection. Armed Jewish sentries permanently replaced Arab guards around isolated farms. The legendary Anglo-Palestine Bank emerged during 1902. This vital financial institution remains an absolute economic giant today. Visionaries established the prestigious Hebrew University of Jerusalem much later. Albert Einstein donated his priceless personal scientific archives right here. The apocalyptic First World War destroyed the decaying Ottoman Empire. British imperial troops conquered the disputed Palestinian territories through bloodshed. Arthur Balfour authored a highly controversial diplomatic document soon after. The declaration appeared in November of the year 1917. Britain formally promised Walter Rothschild a secure national Jewish home. Cautious global politicians specifically avoided the dangerous legal word state. America and France heavily endorsed the bold British geopolitical strategy. The International League of Nations legalized this mandate authority later. This fateful geopolitical maneuver happened during 1922. The sprawling administrative mandate territory included modern Israel and Jordan. British colonial administrators carved the massive emirate of Transjordan separately. The famous Fifth Aliyah brought staggering numbers of desperate refugees. 250,000 terrified people escaped rising Nazi terror. These rapid demographic shifts sparked intense violent local friction constantly. Fierce Arab uprisings paralyzed the British administration for many months. Insurgents aggressively demanded total cessation of incoming Jewish rescue ships. 450,000 Jews already inhabited the tense territory. Panicking British politicians published the infamous White Paper document soon. This cruel decree officially passed during 1939. Only 75,000 Jews could legally enter over 5 years. Draconian land laws strangled further Jewish agricultural expansion projects everywhere. Palestinian Jews absolutely hated these restrictions, but despised fascist regimes. Thousands eagerly enlisted to fight alongside retreating British military forces. The heroic Jewish brigade fought fiercely against advancing vicious troops. Britain stubbornly maintained cruel immigration blockades even after Allied victory. Betrayed, furious Zionist leaders declared total underground asymmetric guerrilla war. The mighty Haganah militia unleashed coordinated sabotage against military infrastructure. Radical splinter factions like Irgun executed devastating urban revenge strikes. Militants detonated the heavily guarded King David Hotel headquarters complex. This bloody attack killed 91 people during 1946. Exhausted British forces surrendered the explosive problem to nervous diplomats. The newly formed United Nations debated two radical geographic solutions. One radical plan proposed dividing the territory into 2 states. The secondary alternative suggested a vulnerable, unified, binational demographic country. Jewish diplomatic representatives cautiously accepted the controversial geographic partition proposal. Arab political leaders categorically rejected any territorial loss of homeland. 2 massive atomic superpowers secretly controlled the fate of everyone. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin actively despised underground Zionist political ideology. Secret police regularly executed passionate Zionists across the vast territory. American diplomats terrified themselves regarding dangerous alliances between Arabs and communists. Domestic American politics forced politicians to weigh heavy Jewish votes. Andrei Gromyko delivered a totally shocking diplomatic speech to delegates. The Soviet ambassador passionately defended the traumatized Jewish Holocaust survivors. He officially, emphatically, endorsed the immediate creation of 2 nations. This unexpected geopolitical earthquake occurred in late 1947. Stalin cynically hoped a socialist Israel would destroy British influence. The United Nations officially authorized the territorial partition resolution soon. Jews legally received 56% of the fiercely contested land. Arabs formally retained 43% of the highly disputed territory. International peacekeepers assumed complete administrative control over Holy Jerusalem City. 33 sovereign countries approved this monumental legal historical document immediately. 13 angry nations fiercely opposed the controversial global partition mandate. 10 cautious global countries formally abstained from the dramatic vote. Furious Palestinian irregular militias launched devastating strikes against vulnerable civilians. Armed Jewish underground defense squads retaliated with brutal military precision. A terrible, bloody civil war swallowed the collapsing British mandate. Western democratic powers enforced a strict weapon embargo against everyone. David Ben-Gurion dispatched Golda Meir on a desperate funding mission. She miraculously secured $50 million from wealthy American donors. This immense, unbelievable fortune equals roughly $400 million today. Communist Czechoslovakia boldly bypassed the lethal Western embargo through smugglers. Stalin secretly approved massive clandestine shipments of discarded Nazi hardware. Smugglers silently delivered thousands of essential Czechoslovak rifles during spring. 25 dismantled fighter planes secretly reached the besieged Jewish enclaves. British imperial authorities permanently evacuated the burning Palestinian territory soon. Ben-Gurion proudly proclaimed the independent sovereign state that fateful afternoon. This miraculous historical event happened on May 14, 1948. American President Harry Truman recognized the fledgling country within hours. The mighty Soviet Union granted absolute formal recognition days later. Great Britain cynically delayed official state recognition until 1950. 5 hostile Arab armies simultaneously invaded the newborn Jewish nation. Lebanon and Syria brutally attacked the vulnerable northern agricultural borders. Elite Transjordanian military legions rapidly conquered eastern Jerusalem and Judea. Iraqi mechanized tank battalions pushed deeply toward the central settlements. Heavy Egyptian armored columns halted just 35 kilometers from Tel Aviv. Total merciless annihilation seemed absolutely certain for the surrounded nation. Cargo ships carrying vital Czechoslovak munitions anchored in Haifa port. Desperate underground mechanics rapidly assembled 4 newly delivered imported fighters. Israeli rookie pilots engaged incoming hostile bombers on May 29th. Their poorly maintained, jammed cannons failed to inflict serious damage. However, the mere shocking presence of aircraft terrified advancing Egyptians. Armored invasion columns retreated to avoid imaginary massive aerial bombardments. Israeli defense forces secured critical strategic survival victories quite soon. Truce agreements miraculously materialized during the spring of 1949. The brutal defensive war forged a secure geographical coastal corridor. Hostile neighboring Jordan maintained tight military control over eastern Jerusalem. The United Nations proudly welcomed independent Israel into global diplomacy. Discover more hidden, thrilling geopolitical secrets by subscribing to our channel.